prosecutors are explicitly and publicly linking Bryan Kohberger's DNA to that was found on the knife sheath at the murder scene.
The knife sheath profile, there's no question it's a good identification. My problem with what the prosecution, that the state expert could tell that the DNA on that was direct contact. And that's impossible. The strength and the weakness of DNA is that it's easy to move.
So would that mean that it could have been planted?
Well, I'm not saying that happened in Kohberger. Amanda Knox's prosecutor said she cleaned up all her DNA from the crime scene. I laughed. In the OJ case, Henry Lee said to me, some people say maybe he wore a wetsuit.
He had knife training weeks before.
Who knows?
The JonBenet case definitely has something to do with that. What's your take on genetic genealogy, and what role did that play with Kohberger? Bryan Kohberger's DNA bombshell. Did a knife sheath trace nail a killer or hide a chilling twist? I'm Tom Zenner. This is Tom Zenner Scandal with the one and only Cato Kalin. We are getting to the bottom of the Kohberger DNA evidence with one of the foremost experts on the planet. He's from Idaho. He freed Amanda Knox. He's going to talk about OJ DNA, JonBenet DNA. Buckle up. Are you ready, Cato?
I'm ready. I can't wait.
Great to see you, Cato. How about we get right into this? Dr. Greg Hampikian. Greg, I've seen you on the news. You're in Idaho. You are one of the top DNA experts in the world. We're going to talk about your background, some of your accomplishments, some of the innocent people that you've gotten out of prison. But let's start off with the knife sheath, the DNA, which is called the seminal piece in the Kohberger case. You were rather outspoken about maybe a red flag that was involved in this, and the prosecution. Now, there's so many moving parts with this, but bring us up to date on that DNA trace evidence on the knife sheath and what caught your eye and your interest about it.
So the knife sheath profile, the identification is Kohberger. There's no question. It's a good identification, not a problem. There's no evidence of contamination that I saw, and there's no reason to think it happened. My problem with what the prosecution was going to do was that they proffered to the court that the state expert in Idaho at the DNA lab here, who I know, was going to say that she could tell that the DNA on that tab, that metal circle, was direct contact. That is, Kohberger's hand or body part was on that directly, and that's impossible. It's an argument that's going on in the field. It's recent, where some experts are willing to say they can tell how DNA got somewhere. Really, what DNA is good at is telling who. It's definitely Kohberger. How it got there, nobody knows how it got there. Nobody can know. I mean, Kohberger might know, maybe a person who saw it, but no DNA expert can tell how DNA got there. The strength and the weakness of DNA is that it's easy to move. You just take a cotton piece of cloth or a Q-tip we use. We call it a swab, but it's a Q-tip. And you just rub it, and you can move the DNA somewhere else, or some of it. You smear it, basically, and you move it around.
So would that mean that it could have been planted? I'm not. So you're saying that it's easy to identify someone's DNA. It's on the sheath, but someone could take a Q-tip possibly and put someone's DNA on something.
Well, that's definitely true. I'm not saying that happened in Kohberger. What I'm objecting to very strongly is that a DNA expert will risk ruining our field by saying they can tell it wasn't done that way, or that it was done a certain way. Let's say you lend someone your knife or whatever, and or you have a gym clothes and you put a knife in with the gym clothes or whatever. Well, DNA moves around, especially by contact, and we just can't tell how it got anywhere. Now, that doesn't mean that every scenario is equally reasonable. That's what the hardworking, the people I respect most in the courtroom, the jurors, they got to decide how, and they're told to use their common sense. And I think that's good, but I don't think that's my job. I don't think my job on the stand is to give my common sense opinion. My job on the stand is to represent not even my experience, though they allow me to do that. They allow me to give an opinion based on my few cases. And really what I should represent is the state of the field. You want your doctor to know all the medicines, right? not just the ones they've used for 20 years, the new medicines too. And that's what I try to do.
Well, with him pleading guilty and getting 4 life sentences, and obviously my opinion is guilty as can be, but I could never figure out that at a crime scene that they said the blood was leaking from the house. How did he wear a special suit? How was the car? Even though you clean with bleaches, how is something from a crime scene like that? And Greg, I mean, this is what you do. How does someone clean all that up, no matter what? There's got to be a speck or something that they didn't find, correct?
I mean, we would imagine if someone's at a scene, you're shedding, 10,000 cells an hour or more, right? And so your DNA is likely everywhere that you've been, but the likelihood of any lab analyst finding the right spot and picking it, that there's a lot of variables that play into that. But 2 important cases. I mean, Amanda Knox's case that I worked on a bit. The prosecutor said she cleaned up all her DNA from the crime scene because they didn't find any of her DNA at the crime scene. And I laughed and said, God, I'd love to hire her because that's a remarkable skill to be able to visually see DNA and clean it off. And in in the OJ case, famously, I remember asking Henry Lee, who was a mentor to me, how it could have been done. What are people saying if there's no blood on his clothing or in his drain? They check the shower drain. And I'm not an expert on the OJ case, but everybody has to talk about it. And Henry said to me, some people say maybe he wore a wetsuit. And I thought, well, that's as good an explanation,
Well,
and a good impersonation.
Actually, Greg, it's funny you said that because OJ was he was on a series that week, and he started a new show called Navy SEALs, and he had a wetsuit,
and he had knife training. He had knife training weeks before.
But it's sort of like, I could see it because he had he was trained, by SEALs. And it's who knows, but it's just very bizarre that, did he wear a wetsuit or did he wear one of those American Psycho plastic wrapper? Who knows? We'll never know.
But we're still talking about it 30 years later, which is unbelievable.
Well, and then you met in your book, you've got who I think was the genius of the trial was now the name the
Barry
Scheck. Barry Scheck, who did DNA. So I don't know if you had any relationship with Dr. Henry Lee, your mentor, and Barry Scheck. Did you know him?
I did know Barry. I met Barry because I wrote a book with Calvin Johnson, who was exonerated by the Innocence Project. I didn't do his case. This was 1999 when I was just starting. And I interviewed Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, the founders of the Innocence Project. I went up there, met with their students, saw the amazing work they were doing, and immediately came home to Atlanta, Georgia, and said, let's start a project. And there were some law students who had organized it, and so we started. But I agree that Barry's an amazing, amazing lawyer. You listen to him, and you believe him. I watched a bit of the OJ trial. I believed each of the lawyers as they spoke. I would have been a terrible juror for that trial. But anyway.
Well, you would have fit right in if you were a terrible juror.
Oh, see now, all right, I'm going to object, Tom, with all respect. Objection. I respect jurors, and that jury, like I was talking to my partner's dad, and I was like, he's a cop. And I said, you remember the OJ trial? And he's like, yeah, and we couldn't remember what year it was. Like we thought and I was like, yeah, I watched a lot of it, or I watched all of it. And I'm sure, Cato, you hear this all the time. Yeah. People say they watched the trial. And then I looked it up. That was the longest sequestered jury in American history. 11 months, I think it was.
I think it's longer than that, but yeah, 11 sequestered for at least 11 months.
Yeah, and I really respect those people. I don't think they were fools. I think that they, unlike me, listened to all the evidence that the judge let in, and those barriers are there for a reason. And they came to a very quick decision. I don't think it's because it wasn't reasoned. I think it's because because one of the lead detectives perjured himself in front of them.
Yeah.
And I know as an expert, when I show up, the jury gets an instruction. They're supposed to look at me and use their subjective judgment. They're not told to measure things or get a lie detector testimony. They're supposed to look at me and any other expert and any witness and subjectively judge, is this person telling me the truth? Well, when one of your lead witnesses perjures himself in front of a jury, you're losing that case. Because remember that the level of conviction is reasonable doubt. And here you are listening, and jurors, in my opinion, in my experience, they love cops. They respect the police, and they love to hear their testimony, and they treat them as public servants. And defense will often try to cast aspersions. It's very unlikely to have that be successful.
Yeah, I got to give you credit, man. That is a very succinct explanation. I mean, I've never really heard it articulated like that, but that makes sense. I mean, a lot of that does, right? I mean, the jury is an easy target, easy to blame in the OJ case.
Well, they were, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
But they got a lot of Marriott points. I'll tell you that, if they were sequestered that long. But and you know, all the evidence that wasn't allowed in the trial. We've done multiple episodes on that. The cops had everything they needed and it just wasn't allowed in. But Cato, how about a proper introduction for our guest today? I wanted to get right into the questioning, but I want to let our audience know this is a treat. We're going to have some serious hardcore DNA talk with some of the biggest cases. He was involved in the Idaho Innocence Project, which meant 40 innocent people were released from prison because of his work. We're going to get into all of that, how it pertains to OJ, Amanda Knox, John Bonet. That one is attached to DNA. We're going to talk to our guest about that. But Greg Hampikian, renowned American biologist, multiple degrees, Cato. I mean, you look at his wall, there's a lot of framing going on. MS in genetics, PhD in genetics from the University of Connecticut. A lot of basketball championships to celebrate too with UConn.
Go Huskies.
Yeah, go Huskies. You're spoiled. And really one of the guys, one of the key figures when it comes to DNA, genealogy, all that stuff, especially when it pertains to big crimes, which is what we are going to talk about today. Side note, he also has the patent on on the ability to barcode DNA. So amazing career. Just wrapped up a career as a professor at Boise State. So enjoy some free time here. Yeah. But Cato, did you ever think you would be attached to so many conversations that have something to do with DNA when you came out to LA 40 plus years ago? I mean, your trial and then all the cases that we covered. DNA is just at the core of so many of them.
So new to me. And Greg, you probably think that with Cato that DNA meant dude needs apartment. But Greg, no. I have my own place. So Greg, please.
Come and visit Boise again.
Greg, you have a couch anyways.
And a guitar on the wall?
Oh yeah. He's not only all the degrees, he's also a rock star, as you can see.
Yeah.
But no, I never thought that because
Right.
it was all 1994. It was so new, and I was educated by Barry Scheck and how he explained to a jury where I think the prosecution kind of didn't have as much knowledge as he did, and so that was. It's still complicated. And Tom, you mentioned he's got a barcode on DNA with Greg. It's amazing that every day with technology, there's got to be something new with DNA. You said genealogy. That's relatively new, but it's got to be where every day with technology, something else happens with DNA that we can find something out with results.
Yeah. And I like to say to be old is to be embarrassed. The things that I used to teach, I mean, I remember teaching students that mammals couldn't be cloned. This is before Dolly the sheep was cloned. So the new things, like for your audience, because I know your audience is very interested and studies these questions. The new technology that's really changing things in genealogy, I think, is the ability to get DNA from hairs that don't have roots. So back for 20 years of doing the work, we would say if you had a hair and there was no root, you could only do mitochondrial, not very nothing you could search a database with. Well, now, as of the last 3 or 4 years, and a lot of analysts who work in crime labs don't even know this yet. So your audience can go solve some crimes. If there's a crime with a hair, even that doesn't have a root, you can get regular DNA, which is called STR, short tandem repeats, or the type we use for genealogy, which is a completely different type. And so you can go back to these old cases where they just had a hair. And we did that. We had the very first case where it was used here in Idaho, a case I worked on after Charles Fain was exonerated. He spent 20 years on Idaho's death row. And I was doing a shoot for somebody wanted to pitch a story to the History channel about Hatfields and McCoys. And we're hammering a pipe into some Hatfield graves. And the guy who's there with this pipe, I'm like, what do you do during the day? And he's like, oh, I'm a paleogeneticist. I was like, what do you study? He's like, Cro-Magnons, mastodons, that kind of thing. I was like, wow, his name's Ed Green. And I said, hey, I've got this case. Charles Fain was exonerated. 9-year-old girl was raped and murdered. He did 20 years on death row. I can't get him compensated. I had to promise him I'd try to find the real killer. And I have, there's a hair left, a pubic hair, short pubic hair that was left on this poor girl's body. Do you think you could use your Cro-Magnon techniques to get genealogy information? So he started a company called Estrella, and the very first case where genealogy was used in this way, where genealogy evidence was actually used in a criminal case at all, was here in Idaho. And it was just, 2 years ago, I guess. And a man was convicted, Dalrymple's his name, of this murder and rape of this young girl that happened in 1982. And that was just 2 years ago. We convicted the right guy. And Charles Fain was there. The guy who was exonerated was there. He called me because I was at a case.
That's got to be so rewarding. And DNA is such a powerful tool, and it can be used in so many different ways, by both sides in a trial, right? To convict somebody, to get somebody off, and you just hope you get the right result, but you don't always do. We're going to be talking about that. But I want to go back to Kohberger here because, you live in Idaho. This is your world. You've been on many shows talking about it, and a lot would have had to do with DNA if this had gone to trial and he hadn't taken a plea. I was in touch with Ann Taylor's office all week. I'm trying to get her on the show. I was actually I talked to James Fry, the chief in Moscow, Idaho, who's now taking another job. Ironically, he's taking another job. He's somewhere else. He couldn't do anything with us because he's got a deal for a documentary that's coming out, so he can't talk anywhere else. But DNA would have been front and center in this thing. And Kohberger did have a competent defense attorney. Right. I mean, it's not like
I know one of his attorneys.
You could talk about that. It's not like he went out and spent, bought the dream team like OJ did. She was a public defender, Ann Taylor, and she also works, in a big law office in Coeur d'Alene. But he had a decent attorney, but they packed it in because he did it. But if DNA had been used in that trial, where do you see that going? How would it have been presented? Who would it have favored more? With a good defense team, could they have done anything with the DNA to try to get him off the hook on a technicality or something?
Right, and this is where I think Cato's going to hopefully chime in, because the DNA identification on that knife sheath, as I said, is perfect. It's Kohberger. There's no question. The problem is that the state apparently was going to try to stretch that beautiful identification into also it was direct contact, couldn't have been a gym bag or couldn't be anything indirect planted or contamination or anything. And that would have opened a line of questioning from the defense that would have exposed the faulty reasoning behind the state's claim that they could tell how it got there. And so what's the jury going to start thinking? Well, if the jury listens to the defense, and I agree with the defense, I think they could be convinced that the state expert is stretching. And remember what I said about OJ, and this is just my opinion, is the trust a jury places in a witness. This is the most important thing. They're ripped away from their lives, chosen by lottery. They have to be there. They're listening to every word, and then they find out somebody's lying to them. They're there not getting paid. These other people, are still getting their paycheck. That pisses people off, as it should, and that'll ruin a case. And that's why I'm urging all my friends who are DNA experts, don't fall for this trap, because it will get you eventually. What are we going to say when there's a rape victim and there's no DNA? Are we then going to say, well, then you couldn't have been raped? Of course not. We're going to say, well, they didn't find DNA. That favors the defense, but here's the things that favors the prosecution. DNA analysts should stay in your lane. Your lane is identification, and give the jury some information about studies that have been done that shows how DNA transfers or whatever. And so I think it could have been a problem. And I think, I don't know, Cato, what's your opinion of what happened with the DNA? Were you there for the DNA testimony at OJ?
Well, I was actually sequestered not to watch, and I actually obeyed, and I didn't know what was going on in the trial. Now, in hindsight, I did see things with Furman pleading the fifth, because we've had Tom Lang on and said that destroyed everything because he didn't answer a question, and that just sort of made it tough for.
Well, the question was, did you fabricate or plant evidence in this case? And he was already taking the fifth, so he was committed to that. I realized the jury didn't hear that, though, right? That's not something the jury heard.
No, there's something that the jury did hear, though, where it was how the defense knew to question him. Every time he said the fifth, he kept digging a deeper hole with the question that they did. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert again, but I remember this because it moved me so much that what happened, and that I was teaching in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had mixed classes of races. My black students thought OJ was innocent and being railroaded. My white students thought he was a monster, and so I followed just that testimony. As I recall, the jury got an instruction, and they didn't hear about the fifth, but what they heard was, Furman's not here. You can decide what it means. Right. And he had just been shown to be, using the N-word and perjuring himself, so that the jury probably concluded, hey, this guy's been debunked. All that stuff we listened to, this guy, we can't trust this guy. And I thought the judge made good decisions. He at that. I mean, what do you do when the lead guy takes the fifth?
Exactly, and you're probably right, because I was sequestered from watching, so maybe the jury wasn't there. But you mentioned with your students in Atlanta, the blacks and the whites, how the media then later, how they kept showing split screens of reaction, and it just divided us. And as a country, it's like it brought, especially in LA, it just brought race relations back probably 30 years at least.
The biggest decision Judge Ito made, I think, that changed culture was allowing it to be tried or televised. Yeah, I mean, bringing cameras in there. I mean, that was all anybody talked about for the better part of a year. And imagine if we had renderings that we had to rely on, right? As far as a recap from the day. I mean, this thing just took on a life of its own. Right. One phrase when it comes to DEA that wasn't involved in the OJ was genealogy. Right? Genealogy cases, genetic genealogy, right? That's something that we've dealt with in the last few years. The John Bonet case definitely has something to do with that. You look at a company like 23andMe. They used to be looked at as, oh my God, they're doing this revolutionary, unbelievable thing. Trace your ancestry. Right. Oh wow! But now you find out, man, they were just essentially mining that data, right, and using that too. So they're not looked upon in the same way. What's your whole take on genetic genealogy, and what role did that play with Kohberger? Because didn't they use some of that to try to trace it to his family?
So that's my second point that I was hoping would get fleshed out in a trial. And I'm glad there's no trial. It's always better if someone admits something and you close it down and people don't have to go through a trial. But the second point is that the state, through the FBI, use genealogy, but they're violating not just the terms of service, but their own internal, values when they say that they're not going to violate these terms of service, and then they do. So people who send their DNA away and say, I don't want to have anything to do with law enforcement, I just want to know, who my real father is or something, and then their DNA is used in a conviction, and potentially a wrongful conviction. Those people need to know before they send their DNA in, this could happen. And as long as you're willing, and I think a lot of people are very willing to send in their DNA and have law enforcement use it. As I say, I don't want a rapist at the family reunion camping out with my kids. But also, I'm not sending my DNA anywhere because I don't know what they're going to do with it. And the only thing that originally they said they wouldn't do is they won't clone you. A lot of these hospitals and stuff that were getting it, but they didn't tell you anything else. They're making millions off of this. 23andMe didn't. They tried valiantly to make money off of it, and they didn't succeed. It's not an easy, not a money winning proposition yet.
Yeah, it was 23andMe, Tom, you mentioned, that was the one that was part of the Kohberger case? Because wasn't it also part of the...
I not necessarily. I just kind of referenced it in general.
But wasn't it also part of the BTK killer?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if it was 23andMe, but
it was a
genetic genealogy.
Yeah,
was.
But it was one of those where they traced something back from a company that got looking at ancestry.
Yes, yeah, and those terms of service keep changing. So there are places that say you can opt in for law enforcement, but the people who opt out, their DNA is being used anyway. So there's no enforcement, until somebody goes to jail for misusing DNA or loses, their livelihood. We're not going to see any changes. It's too tempting. You want to solve a crime. And we did it. 2012 in my lab, we trained the Idaho Falls Police Department, which was the first police department in the country to find a last name lineage for a rape and murder. This was a case, Christopher Tapp, a good friend of mine who did 20 years, falsely convicted for rape and murder of Angie Dodge in Idaho Falls. Anyway, we trained the police department. They still thought Chris was guilty. They thought there might have been another guy because the semen didn't match Chris. So obviously he was there, but didn't leave semen. And these are these crazy, don't look at the DNA propositions that are in court. And so Chris was wrongfully convicted, and we started using the DNA, and we convinced the police to try to find the last name of the man who left the semen. And so I entered the DNA in a database. At that time, we weren't really sure what we're supposed to do or not do. And we found potential last names, and then they eventually found the last name lineage. That was 2012, before any of the California cases broke.
Greg, this is fascinating. And, for us to get guests like Greg, it takes a lot. These are busy people. They're high profile, and that's what we want to do. And that is why we are starting our membership right now. This is very special. This is for our fans who have been with us for over 3 years, loved our content. Really, we have really separated ourselves with our content, with the entertainment value that we bring, and these guests where we can get into these biggest cases that we know you are fascinated with. So are we. Cato and I love this stuff. We want to go to 2 episodes a week. We want to bring in the biggest names that were attached to the biggest crimes. And in order to do that, we're going to need the help of our best fans that follow us. And for that, you join one of our 3 membership programs, we are going to blow you away with the value and the access that we're going to give you. We're going to give you things like the ability to give us questions to ask our guests. We will take some of our guests and bring them into live chats that you can participate in. You're going to get access to episodes earlier. You're going to get bonus content. And with a guy like Cato part of this, and Cato, I know there's so much that you've gone through, throughout your life in the last 30 plus years, but even during the OJ time that you haven't even shared. And that's what this membership is for fans that want to hear that.
Yeah. So many. So when I became extremely famous, everybody wanted to meet. So the stories that I've met people, and to stay in on the theme of crime, I was in it's a private story. I don't get into the whole thing, but meeting Phil Spector, that I was sitting next to him when he's doing Celine Dion's album. Robert Blake at the Playboy Mansion. I kept going, why don't they just have a cardboard cutout of Cato at every crime scene? It's okay. What is going on in my life? Why am I meeting these crazy people? But I'd share some of these stories, and I think that's important for our membership.
Yep. And nobody's going to do it like Cato and I. So sign up for our membership. There's 3 levels. One of them's going to fit you. We're going to bombard you with value, and we really appreciate it. We want to take care of our members, and that's exactly what we're going to do. All right, Cato. DNA, man, we can't get enough of this, and we're gonna move on pretty soon to some of these other cases that Greg has worked on and freed innocent people that were facing decades in prison or maybe the rest of their life. But more, if you had a follow up on the genealogy.
Yeah, I did. So, Greg, if a person's data is not in the crime base and you're working on an innocence project, does that screw everything up because they don't have a record and it's impossible then to find? There's no, they're not in the database, so you can't convict them. correct?
Yeah, Katie, I mean, this is the big point of genealogy: is it's for the non-criminals, and in fact, there's an interesting inversion. You know, for years, a lot of us have complained that there's a bias in the database and that it's enriched for poor people and minorities in the criminal database. And you know, if I leave a cigarette butt at a place where someone's murdered, I'm not getting a call because I'm not in the database. But if you have been convicted of a felony and you happen to leave a cigarette butt somewhere in some parking lot where somebody's murdered, you're going to be investigated. And so there's that bias. Well, it's just the opposite in the genealogy. It's white people in the genealogy, generally, you know, people who are doing okay, and they're just hobbyists. They want to find out about their genealogy. And so we have a way now to look at those people, those just average citizens. And what's really interesting is especially if you're a white person in America, because there's so many of those folks who participate in the genealogy, you don't have to send your DNA in. 75 to 85% of the time, I keep hearing different figures. If we get a sample where we do genealogy and it's a white person, you get a hit to the genealogy database, right? You're not going to get that in the criminal database. So that hit, by the way, is not to you, it's to one of your relations, maybe a second or third cousin now. They can get out to fourth cousin sometimes who participated. So we're all represented in that database, or Caucasians, much less so minorities. And in Europe, they won't allow it, you know, to be searched.
Yeah. Well, 23andMe did mine, and I'm 95% golden retriever. So I'm very confused. I don't understand how this works. Did they make a mistake?
Hey,
for the heart ailment,
Greg, I have a Q-tip. I'm going to get some DNA. I'll send it. You can do a second opinion if you want. Make sure he's not a schnauzer or a boxer or something. I mean, well, I'd like to have a little more data on this. You know,
I was part of a dog study because what happened was there was one company that they asked you to send in a picture of the dog and the swab. And so I was talking to some experts. We were in Hawaii at the biocomputing meeting, and I was like, you know, I think they're looking at the pictures. And that's what I would do. And it's cheaper and faster if I were criminal. And so we did a study, and we looked at several of the companies. And in fact, there was one company where it seemed to be the picture was the leading character, because we swapped the pictures with, you know, we gave a Chihuahua with a shepherd's DNA, and they called it a Chihuahua. And so, yeah, there are good tests and there are bad tests, but the genealogy stuff is pretty good now. If you're willing to do a little homework, you're going to find out who your people are.
31 years ago during the OJ trial, DNA was so new, and you could really razzle dazzle anybody because the general public didn't know that much about it. So you get a Barry Scheck, Dr. Henry Lee, whoever, right? When they sound authoritative, you're going to believe them, right? You're going to get swayed. Now it's more in our consciousness. We know more about it. It's out there. We've studied it. It's more readily available, and we've heard about it more. So with modern DNA like we have access to right now that may have been used in the Kohberger trial if it had gone to trial, go back 31 years. With modern DNA and the ability to decipher it and the accuracy of it and everything we know about it now, do you think OJ would have been convicted with the blood evidence and on the glove and what they had back 31 years ago? Has technology advanced where they could have overcome any confusion or swaying by attorneys?
I don't think so. I don't think the confusion, and again, I haven't interviewed these jurors, but I don't think the confusion was really about DNA. The confusion was about testimony and who you could rely on.
Yeah, but Greg, let me ask you this. Let me just not to interrupt, but what if that had been presented early, and then maybe you didn't need Furman or whatever? Or I guess the defense could have still called him.
You would have had a conviction, I think. Yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert. I mean, but I think if you didn't have Furman, if you didn't have a lead witness perjuring themselves in front of the jury, then the DNA would have been sufficient as it was. I don't think the defense propositions would have confounded the jury's sense of this is probably a pretty good identification. But you also had Henry Lee talking about, I think it was the drop on the socks, and he said it looked like it could have been planted, or he inferred that. So I don't think it was a question of the DNA failing, and I think people saying DNA confused people, or Barry bamboozled them, or whatever. I don't think any of that was really it. These were smart juries. If it was confusing, they wouldn't have taken, what was it, how many minutes to convict?
Yeah, true.
They weren't confused. They didn't. Jurors will reason and argue about confusing things. In some states, they can ask me questions, and they always ask the best questions. Sometimes the judge won't let me answer, which I was just surprised about, because the jurors are asking the obvious questions. Jurors work hard. These jurors were not, I don't think, confused by the DNA. I think they had a different reason.
Cato, it just shows what money can do. Because if OJ didn't have access to that defense team, where they found those tapes of Furman speaking to that author in North Carolina, where he's dropping the F-bomb every other word. I mean, it was because they had the resources and they had such a deep bench.
The N-bomb.
The N-bomb, yeah, the N-bomb, the N-word. And that just goes, because there's a chance that nobody would have ever known about that.
Right.
But they had so many people working on this case, and he had unlimited resources, and it changed everything.
When you think about the normal person, the typical person, like I have a friend who works at the federal defenders, right? So these are the defense attorneys for people who are broke.
Right.
And I asked him, I was like, Dick, who uses your services? He says, everybody. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, how long would you last against the federal government? So you mortgage your house, you get $100,000, let's say, to pay somebody for a murder trial. That gets you the first trial. You have a hung jury, or you have another charge, you got to go back to square one. You got to pay them again, and most people can't do that. I mean, I'm sure Amanda Knox's defense probably ended up being $1 million. I worked for free. I wasn't a paid consultant on that case, but these are expensive propositions, and the government has people who are paid every day to go do this work. Nobody has to write a separate check for the crime labs, et cetera, to work on a case for the state. So while I think it was remarkable that they found all the evidence in OJ that was peripheral, had nothing to do with the crime itself, but turned the case over, I do agree with you. Money, investigation, or in my case, we had dedicated volunteers who do a lot of the heavy lifting. And that happened actually in Amanda's case. I think the people who just followed the trial, and I was getting hate mail from one half, and love mail from the other, but they did a lot of work. I would turn to some of their stuff when I was confused about the non-DNA parts of the trial, because it was in Italian. I had to rely on translators.
So I'm going to do two questions for you to answer here. One will deal with Amanda Knox and the person you got out of Boise for 20 years. I forgot the name you had mentioned.
Two of them, Chris Tapp and then Charles Fain, who was on death row for 20 years. Yeah. So
my question for that one is going to be, when they were released, their attitude, did they hate the system, or were they so happy to be out, and including Amanda Knox after serving 4 years, were they compensated? The other question is, you can answer this one first. The film Minority Report, I don't know if you see it. Are we far off from stuff like that actually happening with technology?
Is that with the precogs? What was Minority?
Yeah, Tom Cruise, the precog. Like,
yeah.
We laugh about it, but is there
trying to do that?
Is there? I mean, can we predict if someone is going, not so much commit a crime, but can we predict with genes and studies that this person might be psychotic?
I don't think we can do that. But the courts are using these tools. So, for example, sentencing, or looking at people getting probation. There's a series of analytical tests that they do, and some of that's now being done by machine learning or artificial intelligence. And so we're moving to a system where that is predictive, right? We are saying this person is likely to recommit, and so we're going to keep them locked up. So that is predictive crime. How far does it go? Well, there's neighborhoods that are monitored for the sound of gunshots. Mm-hmm. That's based on data, not so your neighborhood might be monitored, whatever. So I think it is happening. It's unavoidable because we're confident in our models, and yet we have these protections. And the founders, I think, made a great game system They said, we don't want experts. We don't want people paid by the state to decide the fate in a criminal trial. We want normal people who are picked at random and forced, and they have to be juror of peers. And I wrote a book with Calvin Johnson, a black man accused of raping a white woman with an all-white jury. Things didn't go well. He got a mixed race jury on a similar crime that he insisted having the second trial. Everybody's laughing at him. They're going to bring up the first verdict. He's like, no, I want it. He got it in downtown Atlanta, mixed race. He was acquitted. And that's why I wanted to write that book, was the makeup of the jury. And I'm sure the jurors all worked hard, but you're not going to escape your bias, right? You need to have peers. Sorry, I'm going.
That's okay.
I'm just being a professor.
Hey, I want to talk to you about Amanda Knox, because that was such a big story, right? When this happened, it was so big. She's in Italy. What was she, 21 at the time? You know, the female's dead. Amanda's boyfriend is charged with it, and then she is as well. She ends up spending 4 years in prison. She's very polarizing. You know, you could see both sides. She wasn't likable on some levels. There was something about her that just didn't really connect. Really felt sorry for her. No, of course you did. I'm just talking about the general public. I'm just talking about, like, even how I was thinking about it back then. And I was thinking, you could think, could this have happened that way? But holy crap,
right.
4 years.
I gotta ask you, Tom, wait, because I love to do this, and it's your show. You shut me up. Just cut the mic off. But why do you say you didn't like her?
Because I'm really good at reading people and reading just down. And
I'm just gonna nail you, man. What did you see? What was it? Because what I'm getting at is our impressions are distillations through the media, and now more and more through whatever particular media stream we're listening to. And I think this idea that we formed our own impressions, in my case, it's faulty. I try to get 3 or 4 different media when I listen to something, but still I'm biased, Anyway, so I just want to know, like, what is it that affects you or affects you? Do you remember?
Yeah, well, a little bit. It's funny because you make your career on facts and science and data, and I make mine on opinions, right? And it's just, people are wired differently. I just remember at the time, I felt she was a bit of an enigma. I couldn't really, like, grasp her. I didn't really feel like, oh my God, this person's getting railroaded. I really didn't. I don't know what it was. Nothing personal against her, but I just remember having those feelings back then as I watched this. And where I'm always going to root for an American. I want I want, get back here. You're probably free, or at least, I believe you should be. But there was just something about that. It was there was just sketchy elements to it where she didn't scream to me innocent with either the way she was handling herself, talking to the media, walking, whatever it was. And that's not fact-based or anything. It was just my opinion. But she didn't do it. Right? I mean, there's absolutely no doubt she had nothing to do with it. So what the hell was wrong with the Italian prosecutors that made it seem like she did?
Can I really be honest with you?
Yes.
The same thing that's wrong with what you said. That is gut feeling. So gut feeling works for some things. Very, very few things. Because the gut feeling of someone here is different than the gut feeling of someone, maybe your typical person in Tehran, or the typical person, wherever. Pick your favorite place, you've never been. And that's what I saw in the press when I started on Amanda's case. She was already at trial, and I was in London, and I was going to look into this case because it was a DNA issue related to a case I was working on in London. And I just saw the newspapers, and it's like, guilty, 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 guilty. She's a monster. Right. She's a demon. And then in the States, there was a more mixed view. And all of that's gut feeling. And the prosecutor, Menini, says to CNN even that he had a gut feeling about her. And that is the worst possible thing, because you think about the people who hate you, right? There are people who hate you. Mm-hmm. Is their gut feeling right? What if they just got it from a snippet of your video? Is their gut feeling right? Of course not. And so rationalism, counting, reasoning, and yet there's a place for that subjective feeling. And in the courtroom, it is for the jurors to look at every witness and use that, what you basically have, use the information and what do you feel from this person? And they're told to do that. But everywhere else, certainly in my field, it's your enemy. I don't know who's innocent or lying to me. We do this every year. We test the national system. We train our children. Every year, we tell them there's a fat man who's going to come down a chimney. Now, the reason I think that these are important is we teach our children about the tooth fairy and this and that. We teach them there is something about which your entire culture, your family, your friends are going to lie to you about. And Cato, you experienced this. You were lied about. And so then you have to do what? If somebody's going to find out if you're really the guy they say in the headline, they're going to have to do some work. They're going to have to do some reasoning and undoing that feeling, that gut feeling, especially if you've been lied to, or if they add, I always say when I'm on these documentaries, it's like, oh God, I hope they don't play the bad music before they show my face, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always said that the court of public opinion in the beginning were totally against me being the freeloader, I was the assassin's target, everything. It was just whatever it was everything wrong. And you can't, myself, a man of Knox, you can't, the more you go on a show to defend yourself, the more it looks like, well, it's sort of that snowball effect. It's like, oh, he is a bad guy and all that. But you're going, no, that I come from Wisconsin. Right. I'm a really raised, loving family. But, the more you say, you got to just obviously it's been 31 years and now things are, people saying, yeah, I always thought you were a nice guy. I'm right. So it's just, It happened much later in life, but I'm fine with it.
The exercise is to rehearse your mistakes, not your gut feelings that were right. Analyze the ones that you find out later were wrong. So the Ramsey case, I wasn't doing DNA, I think, when it first started. I was in Atlanta. And I just remember the mom of this poor girl, this poor mom, getting on the press and saying, whoever did this, he or she. And I was like, she must be guilty. Who would think it was a woman? It must be the mom. And so I'm exposing this, to show that we do have these gut feelings. We think we figured it out.
Right. Everybody's Columbo.
Oh, and especially when you watch something and your opinion can change 5 times.
Yeah,
based on how it's presented. Like I believe that. Oh, he did it. Oh, no, she did it. Right. I mean, it's incredible.
And it's all really repetition, like you said, with a man of Knox, guilty. They do that on purpose. They want to plant the seed that you hear repetition, you go, I guess it's true. Mm-hmm. And it's the furthest thing from truth sometimes.
Yeah, repetition. I mean, there's a number of things. Kahneman wrote a book, the guy who won the Nobel Prize, Thinking Fast and Slow. And I haven't read the book except like in the airport fast. But I've listened to a lot of his tapes. And he just goes through all of these things, like the first thing you hear, how important it is, the last thing you hear, all of these biases that we have. And you realize how good they are. Like I was here in the membership. I want to be I'm subscribing.
Sign up for the highest level. We're gonna have a special level, $1,500 a month just for you, Greg. It's the Greg level, $1,500 a month. You're gonna get a lot of good stuff, though. I guarantee you. Cato and I, with this show, we see what true evil is. We do a series on Richard Ramirez. That dude is evil. Ted Bundy. There's some very, very evil. Kohberger is the epitome of evil. He's a horrible, horrible, terrible thing. But you know what? If you think about it, and you've dealt with this, prosecutors that know that someone didn't do something and still convict them because, it's their job. They're up for re-election. They're doing this. They're doing that, whatever. But to, in your soul, know that person didn't do it and still get them committed. That's evil. I know you've probably seen that, and you've gotten people out that didn't do it.
But don't you think a defense attorney knowing someone's guilty is the same way that they're
True.
But don't you say that's sort of like
okay, but that's their job, and the court system is set up where you have someone defend you no matter what, and they have to do it. It's their job. If you're a prosecutor and you know that person didn't do that, and you don't give a crap, and you go put them behind bars for the rest of your life, there's something morally really, really wrong with that. And I don't know.
It's super rare. I think it's more like this. First of all, there are C students, and they're the most common in every field, right? And people are busy. And so a prosecutor has a job. I'm glad it's not my job. And they're going to go and do it. And they're not 100% sure of anything. They may convince themselves after going through, and meeting victims and stuff. But we don't know. I don't know what happened. nobody knows that. And so I think they're trying to do their job. They have their biases. Yeah, they cut corners. Most of them are not intentionally putting away innocent people in our system, and
No, I agree with that. I do agree with that, Greg, but some do. And here's one classic example is the Duke Lacrosse case, right? That prosecutor, he knew damn well what he was doing, destroying these kids' lives forever. I don't know. I think it probably happens way more than we think.
It happens, but it mostly happens through other mechanisms, I think. And that is they have a job to do. Once somebody decides it's going to go to trial, Cato, you're absolutely right. If there's roles people play, and if the defense attorney plays her role properly and the prosecutor plays her role properly, then what we see is gladiators in the last like battle for life and death that Americans can watch on TV or go live, and they're battling over somebody's life. But if the system's working, the defense attorney follows the rules. They can't allow someone to perjure themselves, but they're going to defend their client's rights. The prosecutor's going to follow the rules. They get to go first and last. There's all these rules that try very hard to make it fair. And while going back in time and saying, the prosecutor should have known better, yeah, they should have known better. But a lot of their cases aren't slam dunks. Every fact lines up. They still have to go through it. Somebody's a victim. So anyway.
Well, that also makes it why it's so important that there is such a thing as an innocence project too, that people that are innocent can get out. And like I mentioned before, the question about Amanda Knox and the people you knew in Idaho that got out, what they were like when they got out, if they came up to you and just hugged you and said, "I'm so glad to be out," or "I'm so bitter," or "I better get money," and what it was if they came up to you and talked to you.
By the time they get out, and I'm not going to play it for the audience. I'm going to just tell you the truth. By the time that they get out, we're all exhausted. Yeah. And I also know enough about my clients to know that I haven't been through what they've been through. Cato, I don't know what it's like for you, like to have gone through what you went through with the press. And so like with Amanda, one thing, when Amanda Knox got out, the first thing I said to her, and I saw her just, it was a couple of weeks after she'd flown in, and I went and spent time with her family. And I said, "Amanda, you're a bright, intellectual young woman. She loves Italian literature. She was like one of my students." And I said, "Put this behind you. Don't try to make a living doing this. Do your other things, And she went and she was a reporter and all this. And then her mom called me and said she was depressed. And I switched my tactic and said, "Okay, come into the annual meeting where we have like 150, 200 exonerees. There are special sessions just for exonerees, and that might help you." And she became really the face of that group, and has done very well. But what these people are like, they're all damaged. What would you be like?
No. I think one day is too many to be in, and to when I see these stories of being, it breaks my heart. And also just seeing the family and how you're innocent and you spend all that time. Honestly, it's like the stories they affect me.
Yeah. Well, think about it. I think it's like, you're just euphoric. Yeah, oh my God, I'm out. I'm free. But then you have time to think about it. And then you're bitter. You have to have some bitterness to think that they would do this to me. And you would take it so personally. And then why not try to capitalize on it, I guess, if you can, or someone's got to pay. I mean, they stole lives from you, or stole years from your life, and it's terrible.
It's like Amanda, she embraced it. She didn't at first, and she embraced it, and then I think that sort of clears her mind.
Given her meaning, and she's able to use her various talents in writing and in speaking and in thinking. So she's able to use that. But I think, I tried to do a study, and it just kept getting blocked, but to what it is that makes people adjust well after an exoneration. And so we had these questions with a sociologist I put together. Is it compensated? I remember Peter Neufeld telling me, the co-founder of the Innocence Project, if their mother's alive when they get out, they're going to be okay. And I thought, God, everybody's got these feelings. Let's do some studies and data. And it's hard. I think the things we see on TV, or the book I wrote with Calvin Johnson, I wanted to call it From Anger to Joy, because this guy didn't hold anything against anybody. He met the prosecutor, shook his hand, Cal was, yeah, but not everybody's like
No, no,
that.
no.
And most
Yeah, I wouldn't have
when
done that. That's not me. What a legacy, Greg, it's an amazing legacy when you can, at the end of your career, say you got 40 innocent people out of prison. Unbelievable. So great job with that. Great job of your entire career. I got one more question, and Cato can ask you one more if he's got it. But I got the speeding ticket. Can I bring in a DNA expert and we can razzle dazzle and hocus pocus that judge and that cop and maybe get me out of this speeding ticket? Can you be an expert witness for me? I don't want to pay this $600.
I'd be happy to see how. I wonder. I've never had a traffic.
Let's go.
You know
man.
what?
Let's do it.
I just figured out I used to get parking tickets all the time, and I finally don't get any parking tickets anymore. And that's because I took off my wiper blades, so everything's just they can't put the ticket anywhere.
That's it. They can't do it.
So the advice I give Tom. Do you have a question for me?
Yeah. Hey, Greg. I warned you yesterday. I said, hey, man. When we bring on our guests, I always give them a chance to ask Cato Kalin a question. Everybody watched the trial. Everybody thinks they know Cato. Now you do. You got something for him? Did you put some thought into it, Doctor?
Yeah, but I mean, I was amazed because I did. When you asked me that, I'm like, what am I going to ask him? Gel or mousse?
That was one of the things I've written so many articles in magazines before, from Esquire to everything, and tips for house guests. I've done it all, and it's gel, by the way. Gel all the way. Mousse is too flat.
I have a question, which is when you first saw, and when was it, that a national newspaper said the cops thought you committed the crimes that OJ was being tried for?
Right. There was a headline that said cops think Cato did it, and it was it's because first of all, I'm an extrovert. Everything in my life during the trial, I became an introvert. I had trouble dealing with it. I have a daughter. I couldn't, we'd go out, and it was just almost impossible at that time. I had a publicist, and me having a publicist, first of all, and he repped Michael Jackson. He repped Frank Sinatra at the time. He said he's never seen anything like it with crowds of people. And I'm being humble. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying everybody recognized me. It was a different era where everything was on TV. I was flashed on TV. But yeah, that made me, caused extreme pain in my stomach. I ulcered. It's too unexplainable. But the thing that I also love humor, and I try to transfer everything into humor. And so I would tell people that when I would go to a grocery store, my two forms of ID were the Inquirer or the Globe.
I've never heard that one. That's funny because you're on every one of them. That had to be surreal going in a grocery store. Yeah. Your picture's everywhere.
Yeah. So I deal pretty much, as you can probably tell after the show, I love laughter. I come from a large family, and it held me together, and I've never needed any psychological help, doctors, anything. I just needed laughter and my best friends and my family. To this day, still. Everything works that way in life.
Laughter is a good medicine, says the...
Laughter is the best medicine if you're out of NyQuil. Anyways.
Yeah.
Hey, Cato, you have a consulting business where have expert witnesses go to trials, right? You should be the guy that comes in and just warms up the crowd. I know this is a little tense. We're talking about a triple homicide. This is horrible. Okay, but hey, Cato Kalin, get the crowd going. Wouldn't that be funny? Hey, let me tell you a thing about that prosecutor. Hey,
yeah. I like this idea of Tom's. Actually, I'm going to be doing my speech, my first one, up in Carmel in Seaside to Detective and Police Association, all on crime. And I thought, boy, this could lead into something. And it's all because of our show, 1 Degree of Scandalous, that police force detectives watch the show. We have detectives on our show. So it's becoming... it's something that I really enjoy. It's like I said during our show, you have to embrace certain things. You stay away from, but you embrace it. You try to make it better, and how it can still instill humor in anything. So, yeah. I'm with you.
Man, I'm glad to hear you're speaking to them. And,
yeah.
And I hope you share some of that personal stuff, because they deal with it all the time. Yeah. And these people's lives, anybody who's touched by crime is so ugly and horrible. Like once you start working in it, and you guys know, you don't see you can't be innocent anymore, right? You can't.
Right. Exactly. No, you look at things differently. Every scenario, you're a little bit more callous, a little more less trusting, right? I mean, I am, right? I mean, I do. As much as we cover crime, I just look at things differently.
And I also think, and I'll end on this thing, and I always, to this day, when I was just too small to realize what I was watching on TV, but I'll never forget the Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, how everything related to how they were raised and how it became, how they were led into murder because of the beatings of the fathers or alcoholism or, sexual something with the family. It's just everything it relates to that. And if you don't have a good upbringing, I just think it's you're going to be causing a lot of harm later in life.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would tell my students, look, there's more quality controls on a human baby coming out of the womb than there is on an iPhone. We all come out pretty similar. Now, you can drop the baby, you can damage it, but almost everything is what's put on that hard drive. And
that's a great way to look at it. That's because you develop, you're fresh, and you got to whatever you are.
You're the product of your environment and everything around you. And man, you could take a couple of those forks in the road, and you could just go a number of different paths. Right. And sometimes you just have to hope for the best too. All right. Well, this was great. Greg, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. If something pops, DNA wise in big cases, we're going to call you again. So be ready.
We'd love that.
All right.
Yep. Great. So great to meet you.
Yep. Greg, thank you. Hey, before you go, just keep your computer up as this uploads. Okay. It'll just take a couple minutes.
Yeah. You can go to the bathroom. You can do anything you want just to have the computer on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll be checking my mail.
All right. Well, that was great.
Fantastic.
I love the episodes we do on DNA. We did a big one with John Bonet, remember, with genealogy and whatnot. But this is good because it weaves its way into so many cases. It's so in the public eye. Everybody's talking about DNA. And like I told you, he invented the barcode. He has a patent on it for individual strains of DNA. Pretty damn impressive.
Pretty intellectual. I love it. Makes me look smarter.
Yeah. Hey, K-Train. So, in comments sometimes, people always give us suggestions on new topics, things we could do. And I probably saw 15, 20 over the last couple of months about the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles.
I saw that Netflix special.
And I watched it and I was texting you and I'm going, I couldn't believe it. That thing grabbed me. I was a little disappointed in the last episode just because I thought I had it all figured out and, it was probably just an accident. Give us some comments. Should we do the Cecil Hotel? I mean, I'm going to get the manager of the hotel. I'll get the big guests with it.
We can go down there.
We can go down there. I don't think, it was a stay on Main and then the Cecil Hotel. What a creep show. What a horror. Lynn, I forgot her last name.
But it seemed the story itself made it sound in the beginning like it was a ghost story.
Exactly.
And it started going in different directions. And I just remember watching it going, this is bizarre. And for her to, for those that, I'm not wrecking the story for them, but the smell coming out of there and the water that she fell into a tank of water possibly. So it's just...
The series of coincidences that weren't really a coincidence, but maybe they were. But this is Ron Howard and Brian Grazer, Imagine Entertainment, that did this. It was brilliantly done. Yeah. Cecil Hotel. Let us know in the comments. Kato and I, maybe we'll end up on the roof. We'll go by those water tanks and do an episode. Would you go with me? Would you somehow get up there?
I would love that. Okay. I'd go swimming in there. I love swimming. So, but and speaking of that, with our people that write in stuff, I think after this episode of seeing Greg, I really think people with the Hulu special are going to say, can you get Amanda Knox? I mean, it's just, Is that
a challenge? You want me to go get her? I'm going to go get her. Let's get Amanda Knox. Greg, I might be calling you for her phone number. So I think I got an inside hook. Hey, it's a great idea.
And
let's get Amanda Knox.
And
tell her that we don't speak Italian because that'll probably be a big plus.
All right. Everything cool?
Everything's great, my friend.
All right. We got the membership starting. So there's going to be more details about that. But jump on board. If you help support this show, we're going to take it to places you could never imagine, and you're going to get so much value for that. All right,
and Zeus? I think also, Tom, I think part of our membership is come take a tour with us.
Come on down,
because that's what people love when we go to crime sites.
And plus we'll take you backstage. We'll do it's all on our YouTube page, so all the details are there. By the way, I think I'm gonna Zeus 2 things. I'm charging you double if you join a membership, triple, and. If maybe part of the membership, they tell us like ways to, keep Zeus in line. Like maybe if I had a water gun from here and I could just Zeus, I would have hit you a couple times today.
Zeus,
but I'm not very. But then you know what? I could have screwed up all that electrical equipment. I'm not a good shot.
Zeus, I'll give you the membership.
Zeus has an idea. Part of this membership, what?
For my membership, Zeus, I'm going to actually give you my Groupon. Don't worry.
I think part of the membership should be maybe they can come and sit on a live.
I love it, Zeus.
Come to the studio.
Yeah, no, we'll add that to it. I mean, could you imagine coming in here, hanging out?
I love it.
We'll go have some lunch afterwards.
We've had some guests.
We'll go check out some crime scenes. Yeah. I'm excited about the membership. I'm excited about this show. School starts for Dash today. My daughter Ivana is going to UCLA, running track. Very excited about that.
That's
she doesn't
great.
start school till late September, so don't have to move her back into Boston. It's a lot easier, 10 miles as opposed to 10 hours.
She's part of the Big Ten now.
Big Ten? That's right. The Wisconsin Badgers.
Minnesota, Wisconsin,
Yep.
we're all set. Midwest people. How
Yep.
did UCLA become Big Ten? Anyways.
It's crazy when you think about it. College football season's here, the NFL too. So, hey, great times. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you load up the comments. Follow the K Train on social media. Zeus, great job today. Appreciate you. Man, we'll just keep these great episodes coming. More Kohberger. We're going to get Amanda Knox in the Cecil Hotel. You guys want to see that one? We'll get that for you. For the one and only K Train, I'm Tom Zenner. Thank you for watching, and we will see you very, very soon.